Hi guys, and welcome to the Stephen King Cemetery Club. Hi guys, we are talking about Sometimes They Come Back, which is one of my favorite short stories from Night Shift. This one is the perfect combination of a typical Stephen King story, typical Stephen King character. It's a kind of what I view as a prototype for It, and it's got elements of 1950s, juvenile delinquents. It's got the spookiness, it's got the guy who loses everything. It's just really good. So the main character is Jim Norman, and I really view him as a stand-in for Stephen King. He is the typical Stephen King character. Jim Norman is like a Stephen King-esque person, and he has recently had a whole bunch of tragedy in his life. His mother has died, his older brother was tragically murdered when they were young, and his fiancée was injured in a hit-and-run accident. He was a teacher in a very rough area. It was the Center Street Vocational Trades High, and I kind of see this as a Welcome Back Kotter situation taken to the extreme. So he is teaching the sweat hogs, and the sweat hogs are pretty dangerous. Sweat hogs are more like Dangerous Minds type students. So he gets this job at a new school where it's more preppy and not as dangerous. And he has a class, period 7 class, which is a lit class. It's full of jocks and troublemakers who have very little patience for literature and very little interest or patience for being in a classroom. So throughout this story, we are getting glimpses of what happened to his brother Wayne. He has not even told his wife about what happened to Wayne, and it keeps showing up as nightmares. Jim was 9, Wayne was 12, and they were walking to the library. They went under an overpass, and there were some kids, some rough juvenile delinquents, who were waiting for them underneath the train overpass. And there was a confrontation. The gang was beating up on Wayne and Jim, and they stabbed Wayne. Jim ran away. So this seems to me to be some sort of not necessarily a prototype for Henry Bowers and his gang, but it does really remind me of that. So it's possible that Stephen King wrote this and, you know, expanded on it for It. You know, that happens all the time. I get ideas and then I use those ideas later. So one of these ruffians had a strawberry birthmark on his chin. So cut to, you know, current time. Jim has a whole bunch of his students meeting untimely deaths, running away, that kind of thing. First time one of his students dies, the teacher who tells him about it is very abrupt, and I don't think that's the way you would inform a teacher that one of his students has died in an accident. It seemed very brusque, very, you know, oh, and by the way, you have a new student because one of yours is dead, kind of thing. It was very weird. And when he gets handed the folder for the new student, he recognizes the photo as one of those kids who had participated in Wayne's murder. So he thinks he's cracking up. He's already had a nervous breakdown. You know, he's not sure what to think about this. The kid has a strawberry birthmark. So he is convinced that this is one of the kids somehow, and there's a connection with his brother. Quote, "It was crazy, it was lunacy, but it was also a fact. 16 years ago, this kid had driven a knife into his brother." Page 152. So then, like I said, another student dies, and there's a new student to replace him, and that happens to be one of the kids from the gang way back when. So eventually we get 3 of these kids from this gang who are now in the class. They're causing problems. They're telling another student named Chip that, you know, they are going to get Jim. They are going to get him. They are going to do horrible things. And Chip goes missing after he tells Jim about this. Jim calls Mr. Nell, which is another It connection. The police officer in that is Mr. Nell, but they have a different first name, so it's not like it's supposed to be the Mr. Nell. And he talks to him about, you know, the people who were suspected of murdering his brother, what happened to them. You know, has he ever heard of Milford High, which is where all of these new students are coming from. And Mr. Nell says, no, the only Milford I know of is Milford Sematary. Jim finds out that all of the gang, except for a guy named Bleach, or his real name, Charlie Sponder, died in a car crash 6 months after Wayne was murdered. So all of these students are dead. And the only one who hasn't shown up in his class is Bleach. And it's because he's still alive. He's still out in the world. So during this, Jim's wife dies. His wife, Sally, is killed, and he loses it. He decides, fine, I am done messing around. Everything I have is gone. This is it. So he lures these kids, these ghost children, to the school after dark. He has prepared by reading a book called Raising Demons, and he makes a pentagram on the floor. He has brought items that will summon his brother, and he throws all this stuff into the pentagram. He summons some sort of a demon, and the demon asks for a blood sacrifice, which Jim gives him. And he cuts off his right index finger. Then he has to cut off his left index finger, which he's having a hard time with because once you've cut through one finger, you don't have that anymore to help you cut off the other one. Quote, his right hand felt awkward and alien with the missing finger, and the knife kept slipping. At last, with an impatient grunt, he threw the knife away, snapped the bone, and ripped the finger free. Page 167. So he tosses his fingers into the pentagram, the demon thing accepts it, and it begins this sort of involuntary reenactment of Wayne's death. So he had procured a record playing a train noise, so it felt like it was the overpass. It's dark. The kids have come into the building now at this point, and they are all speaking the same dialogue that they were speaking that day. So Wayne is summoned, the dead juvenile delinquents are destroyed, and Wayne, this Wayne thing, this thing that's Wayne but not Wayne, promises to come back. And Jim recalls that there was a warning in Raising Demons that, you know, things can come back. Doesn't mean they're going to be nice. He's not sure what's going to happen in the future, but that is pretty much the gist. Have a spooky day.
I really like Jim. I think it's odd that he never told his wife about what happened to his brother, and he's very closed off. So I do find that a little weird. I would definitely tell someone.